Okay. All right, let me step back a little bit. Okay. Lower my mic a little bit. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. All right, I thought long and hard this past week because I seen other testimonies here, true blessing. And I hope you were touched by what they were saying and how God affected their lives. So for me, I know we're at the end of the series here, of the week here. I'm going to be talking about those 3 words up there. And I feel that those words characterize how my life was in the past and bring it up to speed today. So I'm going to put these kind of words out. I'm going to say this for now. It might be heavy tonight. Being real. You may have experienced things, you may relate to it. Might be the first time, you might be hurt. But if nothing is said, then how will you know? So I just want to put that out there. All right, I'll go put that. It's okay to be real tonight? Okay. But I'm going to tell some very positive things. I hope that you like those things. And what God has done for me, if anything. Okay? All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my history back then. Okay? I grew up in a separated home, a divorced home. So I grew up with 2 sets of families. So now you can imagine, if you went to school for it or learned about it, that does a lot of damage to the brain of a child. I'm pretty sure it did to me. Because as I grew up, I think in middle school, you can classify me as being literally depressed. But nobody cared to do anything about it. Obviously, I was showing it, but nobody cared for it. So going back in the past, I'm going to say that, yeah, I grew up in that kind of environment. And here was the most interesting thing. 2 different sets of families. One living a very low income wealth style, another one more average middle class style. So I saw 2 differences of what money does for you. And you know what money can do to some people. So growing up like that, I was mixed. I was trying to figure out, why was my family separated? Hence the term broken. Why? What was the reason? And then the very common reason is like, was it my fault? Come on, if you don't understand for other people, now you probably see it tonight. So no one cared to answer any of those questions. Not even my own family. All I knew that one or the other, whether it be my mom on one hand and my father on the other hand, they were trying to pull me in different directions. My mom, unfortunately, lived a more harsh life. My dad, a little bit a wealthier life. But most of the time, I was under the care of my mom. So in place of my real father, I had an abusive father in place. So growing up, my mom lived in denial, knowing that she tried to have a family, a really perfect family. But my brothers and sister, half brother and sister, grew up in torment, in pain, in tears, things like that. Being the oldest of the family, I didn't go out much. I couldn't. I think it could be the culture. If you don't know what I am, I'm Filipino. So usually the oldest kind of takes care of the younger ones. So I never got to go out, enjoy whatever, hang out. I stayed at home taking care of my brother and sister. When I was young, I was like 8, 9, 10, growing up with my little one, my brother and sister, changing their diapers, and things like that. So this impacted me. So when you see me, like I look probably different today, but when you see me and my personality, here's the funny thing. In high school, with all of that stuff, growing up with all of this mixture of psychological problems that I had, people thought when I thought I was happy, thought I was happy, really mentally happy, people thought I was sad. I was trying to figure out why. So some people are like, "Are you okay, Chris?" I'm like, I get surprised and shocked myself. I said, "Why'd you ask that question?" "Well, you look really sad or like kind of mean." But I didn't understand why. And then I figured out later that my outside appearance was showing that. Even though inside I was so happy about certain things. Now, when I get sad, oh yeah, I show it. Even my wife, I cry. I cry, shed tears. I'm the sensitive type. So now that you know like what came about through all that, you're wondering like, okay, well, where does God fit into all this? I would say like with the others who have presented up here, I didn't know who God or Jesus was. You know how I knew who God or Jesus was? Was through my mom. My mom, she was the most like I would say, non-willed person to go to church all the time. But she always said Jesus in a prayer. I didn't know what a prayer was, but she just always prayed about something or talked about something. I didn't know what it was at the time. She just talked about and Jesus. Okay? So when I grew up from that, guess what when there was a problem, she would pray. I copied that because I saw problems. And this is what I prayed for during all that time. I prayed for 3 different things, even though I didn't know who Jesus was. I just prayed to something that I didn't think would give me anything. Okay? I prayed for 3 things: safety, money, and food. Those were the 3 things. I knew nothing about the future or anything like that. Moving on from that, I didn't really have a church life. My mom barely went to church, maybe on the holidays. So growing up, didn't really go. But here's the funny thing. She put me in an Adventist school, and she didn't want to. And now here's the funny part. The person that she was with was considered Adventist and didn't really show loveliness in the house. So here was the hard part, growing up inside. So I did not know I was going to an Adventist school until 10th grade. 10th grade, as a sophomore in high school. I was that closed. I didn't know I was taking religion classes. I'm like, oh, they're talking about Jesus. The Jesus that I learned from my mom, nothing connected with me. I guess it was through all that flood and emotions and things like that in my head. It was just, you can tell that there was something wrong with me. Even though I was just going through the motions day by day, going through the motions. So it was pretty hard. You can tell already. It was pretty hard. Now here is something where I had to think about how God really did something for me. Remember when I told you that I was taking care of my brother and my younger brother and sister? My younger sister, she was about 1 year old. I was like 10, okay? We were just alone in the home, and I was taking care of her. No, I don't think anybody else was home. I watched her as best as I could, and then I noticed that she was just breathing fast. Breathing fast. Like, you know, a really small baby just breathing fast. Then I was like, I was just trying to observe. I didn't know anything what to do. Then I was touching her because I was curious what was going on. I was just touching her, "Are you okay?" And I felt she was hot. Okay, she was very hot. Okay, in today's terms, okay, I'm in the medical field if you didn't know. In today's terms, she was hyperventilating, breathing fast, and has a fever, being too hot. And so I just want to tell you this. I knew nothing of emergency procedures or how to survive or take care of a person, like make a person stable. At that moment, for some reason, okay, there's a difference between the evil version of possession and like something leading you, okay? Whatever came about me led me. I was moving. I was like, okay, this is weird. Okay, I was moving. I was going towards the fridge. I don't know why. I was going to the fridge. I opened up the little freezer that we had, and surprisingly, there was ice packs in a Ziploc bag. Okay, and then whatever thought I had, I put it under her armpits. And I didn't know that would save her. That night saved her. I didn't know to call the police. I didn't know anything. I just was taking care of her. So this was that very first time where God intervened in my life for her, even though I didn't know who Jesus was. I didn't know who God was. So, lesson 1. Even if you don't know who He is, He definitely knows you and your situation, right? We also know that his name could be, oh no, one of the characteristics of God is being called the great physician. So at that moment, he was that doctor of the house. All right, so let's fast forward. That was a miraculous surprise for me when I was young, without any form of acknowledgement to God. I didn't even praise God because I didn't know who He was, obviously. All right, next up, fast forward. Remember the time where I told you I had no idea what my school was? If you didn't know, Loma Linda is considered the Mecca of Adventism. Okay? I grew up in a place where that was the spring of life. But I didn't know any of that. Okay? How did I come to know that a God exists? Well, here's the thing. I have some best friends now who lived down the street from me at that time. They didn't push or anything. They say, "Hey, you want to visit our home?" Because we hung out at school. He invited me to their home. And you know what? That's the first time I tasted vegetarian food. You know what? I grew up not being so picky about like food at that time when I was younger. It was more about survival. You don't really care about how food tastes when you just are happy that you got food. And so when I got there, I was so appreciative to say, "Oh, thank you," And I enjoyed vegetarian food. I'll be honest with you, it tasted good. Yeah, so that's where I experienced healthy food. And then my other friends invited me to church. They created a positive experience, a very positive experience. Just remember this theme right here, okay? The positive experience of what leads you to Jesus, okay? Remember that, because you'll learn here that the brokenness and judgment starts happening after that, okay? So moving on, I got to know who Jesus was in a sense, in a sense. I didn't know Him deeply. I don't know the Bible much at that time. So going into college, now I'm growing up, obviously. I'm growing up, okay? I still have some issues with my head. Okay. I never went to anybody for help. I was just trying to tolerate life as best as I could. Sometime during college, I think it was like during my second year, my friend called me out of the blue. Hey, do you want to do Bible study? I'm like, I never have done one, and I respect it. And I said, if it's for the Bible, I'll go. Because you know what they told me at the time? I said, who is it going to be with? And these were people that I grew up with in elementary all the way through high school. And they were leading out the Bible study. And I didn't really do anything with it because I didn't hang out with them because they were a tight-knit group. I'll be honest with you. This group that was leading the Bible study, very tight-knit. Okay, what I mean by that, they were very close. Very close. So me and my friends, we had our own particular group, and they had their group, and then a Bible study connected that, but I didn't judge it. I went to go for it. Went to the Bible study, and it was a blessing in disguise, I'll tell you. What got me was prophecy. If you don't know that God has perfect timing, I hope that you understand that God has perfect timing in the Bible. And hopefully you'll get to learn that. I hope one day that you learn that timing was so big for me. And hopefully I connect that later, okay? If their time permits. So with that, I was not growing up, but moving along and through the Bible studies, and I eventually got baptized because I believed in it for logical reasons. Not because of how I felt, not because of emotional reasons, because logically it made sense to me. It was real to me. Shortly thereafter, this group and me and my group, it turned into a youth group, to be honest. So about 15 or 16 years ago, I was actually in a youth group. And it grew. It grew. And so I can only say this. It grew to a point, and then my time there kind of fell off from there. It was okay. What happened was I was involved in a relationship in there, and everything went after that. Okay. I think we were all young at that time. We couldn't figure out how to resolve or take care of issues, to take care of conflicts, or anything like that. So for me, when I know I did wrong, and I admit, okay, I'll be honest with you, I am not perfect. I stand here today saying that I'm not perfect. I sin, okay? I was broken. During that time, I felt everything was lost. I lost everything. I shut myself out from everything because of all the dynamics, okay? I attached myself to the group, okay? I let my feelings in the group. I put them on a pedestal. I was following them. I put people before me, okay? Obviously, there's a difference between putting your focus on people versus who I need to see, right? So unfortunately, I put my faith into people, and that didn't go so well. And so when I was reaching out for help, there was just no one can do anything about it. Despite me being in the wrong, I knew I did wrong, but the way things were handled, nobody wanted to. There you go. No one wanted to go. Why? Because when you learn something from the Bible, you're all about good. But what happens when something goes bad? And that's where I say, here, what's that middle word? Yes, the youth group built a good community of people. There's an influence. Whatever happened that time, I felt like my reputation was gone because people knew me as the nice guy. Really, the nice guy. Really, I was known to be nice. But I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I felt low. And I couldn't face the people who I used to be with, friends and the people I trusted and things like that. Whether it was my fault, maybe, I don't know. But I was alone. I was alone. Sorry if I pause. It's been a while talking about it. You know, you talk about so many other things about than yourself. But when you start talking about yourself and things that really affect you, it really gets to you. So forgive me for pausing, okay? So, of the things that I did, I shut myself out. Fortunately, I still had my home with my mom, but still had those issues at home. So I put myself in a room for most of the time. I would say 20 hours out of the day, I was in a room. And you know when you're in a room or by yourself, well, I'll tell you, I did mentally go crazy. I did not affect anybody, thankfully, okay? But I did go crazy. And this is what I did. This is the most unfathomable thing, the most harshest thing I could do. That night, okay, I'm gonna put a disclaimer right now. I'm gonna put a disclaimer here because it goes into the supernatural now. Okay, supernatural. You may not hear stories like this in a while, but it does. Okay, it happened to me. At that point, I said to God, I blamed God. I blamed God. This was looking back, hindsight, not good. Okay. I blamed God. I said, I don't want you to be in my life anymore. Just leave me alone. I told him that. I told God, leave me alone. Think about that. Think about what I said. That is something no one should say. Okay? No one should ever say. But I did. I hope people who are watching watch what you say. Watch what you say. You could be ignorant. I thank God forgive me for being ignorant, but you know what? I said that. All right? And now let me put a little story. You know Job back in the Bible? For every person who goes to God, there's like this little hedge of protection. Okay? Where am I going with that? Well, that very night, I was just laying on the bed, okay? Laying on the bed, just doing this. I was not sleepy, okay? You're going to think about sleep paralysis and all that. I wasn't sleepy. I was watching the time. Watching the time, minding my own business. Okay? Minding my own business. Just laying back, having a blank head because I was like, man, I'm tired of it all. Then, all of a sudden, okay? Please. This is where it gets really interesting. All of a sudden, my eyes lock onto something. It locks onto something. Like like your eyes magnetize, okay? If something is up, for whatever reason, it locked onto something as I was laying, okay? It locked on something. Laying back, my eyes locked. I was like, what? And then I couldn't track my eyes like getting out of it. It followed, my eyes followed whatever this was. And there was a plastic bag beside me. Okay, the air conditioning was not on. Okay, but the plastic bag moved like this, right? And then this overwhelmed feeling came over me. And guess what it did? This is not a good thing, to be honest. This was a negative energy, a presence, something that does not want to keep me up. I was out of air. I couldn't speak. I was like, okay, I knew for a moment at that moment, I was like, this is not good. This is not good. For whatever purpose, I was going to die that night. To be honest, I'll tell you that I was going to die that night because I couldn't get out. Nobody could hear me because I couldn't yell. Whatever it is, it grabbed my throat. I couldn't speak. I couldn't. I tried to utter. Even my mind couldn't even utter anything. I couldn't say anything in my mind too. Physically, I couldn't say anything. In my head, I couldn't say anything. So that's really bad, right? But what happened was, what came over me, I knew for an instant, I'm like, this is bad. I have no one else to turn to. But guess what name popped in my head? Jesus, right? I tried to utter Jesus. I tried to say Jesus, but guess how I was saying it? I barely said like this. I remember that time. I was fighting. You know how Jacob was fighting with an angel? I was fighting hard. That's the second time. But guess what happened the third time? You know the rules of threes in the Bible? I fought out and said, Jesus. I really did that. As soon as I did that, guess what happened? God. So now I'm like, you're joking me. I sat up on the bed. I walked around. I paced around. I went like this. I was doing this. I was really trying to figure out what happened. What was going on, right? I was shocked. You know how we all ask for evidence that we want to hear? Maybe, his still small voice. Maybe to feel him, for the Holy Spirit and things like that. When I was learning about Jesus and stuff like that, I wasn't trying to even though I wanted, I never asked for it. I knew that I couldn't really say, I can't feel you here. I always told this to God before this time, before this problem. I know I can't hear you or feel you, but help me. But now, he's put this kind of evidence to say, you called upon my name, and I heard you. That's why if you don't believe in the commandments where you don't take his name in vain, now that's where it's more powerful. People in the world can say Jesus' name tremendously or God tremendously out of context. But for those who respect who he is, he hears you. He hears you. Okay, so there's that. Okay, there's that. After that moment, it turned my mind around because it was really heavy at that time, obviously. And Jesus just saved my life that night. And I couldn't figure out what I could do the next day. I couldn't know who to reach out to. But guess what? During that whole time, there was one or two friends who stuck it out despite me being in such a low state. It's heavy. When you listen to someone's story, when you're in the middle of a trauma or whatever, it gets pretty heavy for them, right? They can't hold so much because it's so much. But I thank them for that. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't had them as well as Jesus, obviously. But I can only say this as someone who experienced it. When I said this story to other people, personally, when I said this to other people, guess what look I got? Like this, like this. Or they're like, they can't believe it. Okay? Like they can't believe it. What's that middle word again? You know, when I really told my heart out to people, it was hard because like I'm like, you really can't relate to me. At the end of those conversations I had where I opened my heart, I felt it. I felt they weren't really like listening. And so I hope tonight where you're listening to someone's story, like for me, where I admit wrong and where I'm sinful in people's eyes because of things. You know, I can say this. Like, oh, he went through bad stuff, don't go near him. But guess what Jesus did? He touched a leper. That was considered dirty in a lot of people's place. That time, touching someone who was dirty was considered dirty. So if you're calling me dirty, you call Jesus dirty, right? That's called being real. So I take everything that I can from what Jesus' example is. All what I do, I try. I'm not perfect at doing it. But the morals and the ethics of it, I try. Okay? All right. Moving on. Okay. It rises from there, okay? It rises from there. I started having positive experiences from that time. So here's the thing. Now that you learned this about me, will that mean that my relationships change? Will that mean you look at me differently? No. What I want you to see is that God works in everybody. That's it. Despite me saying hi to you or saying happy Sabbath, at least you know who I am. You know, how I got there. Okay. Okay, so here, moving past that, interesting story. I was able to get a job. We with my wife. We moved up here to Larry, because after that time of my time with like fighting, fighting myself, and Jesus presenting himself, I was in this state where I didn't want to grow anymore. I stopped because of all the trauma I had, okay? Both religiously, psychologically, emotionally, that throughout everything, okay? I just went like this. Flat line, not dead, but this, okay? Neutral. I told God, I was like, okay, I'm gonna like literally, I know you're there, but I don't want to go to church anymore. So I didn't go to church for like 5 or 6 years. I didn't. And my wife told me when we were living in Tulare, okay, we moved here in 2013. Why aren't you going to church? She asked me, no one told me or asked me to go to church in the 5 or 6 years. She asked me. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I made some excuses, like I'm tired. There's no church, you know, that kind of thing. So time went on a little bit, maybe a couple months later. She then asked me this. I need to find a dentist. And I was like, okay, this is easy. That's easy. I'm going to find a dentist online. And she said, no, a Korean dentist. Very specific. Okay, very specific. So I was searching online and it was kind of tough. And there was one dentist in the area at that time. One dentist in the area. I was like, okay. I found that dentist and I was looking at the history to see if they're okay, things like that. And I saw the school, okay? It said Loma Linda University School of Dentistry. in the 90s. Okay, School of Dentistry. I didn't connect it. I told you, I was like not connected with the church. I was like this. It didn't ring a bell to me. Okay? And then she goes to the dentist appointment. She comes back and she has like, she was like kind of flustered, like surprised a bit. She's like, Chris, you know what's weird? This dentist is inviting us to her church. I don't know what church it was. For all I knew, it was either a Sunday church or a Sabbath church. I didn't know what church it was. So with that in mind, or like, so she goes a couple times again, and she's like, oh, she's really trying to invite us. And so I was like, okay, let's go. Okay, let's go. So we go. I didn't know what day it was. I'll be honest with you. I didn't know what day it was. It was on the weekend. It was on the week. I didn't know what day. I was really that heavy set. Because when I was working at that time, I was overworked. I was burnt out. My brain was foggy. Okay. And I was driving with my wife on the side. And I see like a little cross somewhere, a little cross. And I go, and guess what I see? All Nations Seventh-day Adventist Church. You know what I said again? I didn't go to church for a long time. I was sitting in the car, and I said into my head, you gotta be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. Why? I was actually getting lower in my seat because I couldn't believe what happened. So God also intervened in my life, even though I shoved them aside. He brought me here for a purpose. We were in the smaller church. It was a smaller church, and Pastor Kim's wife is here. When we first went to the church, Pastor Justin said to me, "Do you sing?" Oh my. I said yes, but I didn't know I'd be singing up here till now. So yes, there was that, okay? A lot of things happened since that time. Unfortunately, there was some conflicts within the church, and now we're here. What I want to say is, despite all of that, okay, despite all of those issues, despite whatever was going on, okay, now we're here. And I can say, the people here have a heart. People really love Jesus. There's no feeling of judgment. But my goal as a young adult leader and whatever else I do for this church is to be real. No one tells their stories. I feel sad because our youth comes and goes. I've seen every missionary leave. Okay, every year is heartbreaking. You have the greatest relationship with them, and then poof, they're back to life. They're back to wherever they go. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're alone again. I hope that we can invite and be able to reach those where church is a safe place. Not because of whatever issues. And if there are issues, say something. There's too much hidden stuff. It hurts when you know that some people are saying things behind their backs. It hurts when you know nothing is being said. And there are people who are afraid to say something. This is not how the world works. Outside of God's area and space, it's hurtful. But when you say something for the right and goodness of God, it should be taken as, oh yeah, you're right. that makes sense. And if it makes sense, I sincerely hope that you come to realization that God is there. I hope one day if you ever try God, okay? If you ever get to try out God, okay? Your experiences may vary. It may not be as crazy as my experience. There are other testimonies in the world that are much bigger. But if you have the right intention and if you have the right heart and the right mind and the love, you can do many things. So I want to end with this. A couple of verses. Mai said this one yesterday. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. He'll lead you. Trust in him in all thy ways. Acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. Right? He'll direct your path. Ask for wisdom. Ask for knowledge. I asked God to be smart. He gave me a brain. He helped it, but he didn't. Here's the problem. I didn't specify it well. He gave me some smartness, but I didn't know how to be practical. So during now, I said, God, help me be practical in what I know now. Okay? For our church in Christian life, we know too much, but do we do it? And the last thing I'll say is, how much more will he give to those who come to him? We make big decisions for ourselves because we have strength in our own decisions. But when you make your decisions for his decisions, his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And he can give you much more than what we can do for ourselves. With that, I hope I was real tonight. With that, I hope that you related somehow. I hope you weren't hurt. But if there's something that reached out to you, let God be there with you. Okay? So I'm going to say this as a final thing. I would say bow your heads. Bow your heads, close your eyes, bow your heads. Okay? If you feel that you want Jesus to open up your life in ways that hasn't happened before, or just to reconnect, or just to say a simple prayer, just raise your hand. I just close your eyes. You don't have to watch anybody. This is for you and yourself. Just raise your hand. Raise your hand if you want to connect. That's it. Just to be real. I see that. Okay, you can put your hands down. And I'm going to close with a word of prayer. Father God, thank you for what life meant, at least for me. And to those that are struggling or having trouble or issues or challenges, may you go to them, even if they don't know you. May you guide them to know who you are. I ask, Lord, tonight that whoever's here who needs someone like you in their life, make it known to them. Connect them. Lead them. And there is good people in the world. I ask that you please be with each every one of people, everyone here tonight who are struggling as well. Maybe they can't really say anything. Maybe they don't want to say anything. Maybe they just say it to you in their minds. Calm them. Give them that peace. Thank you for giving us the time that we have. Thank you for all the things you've done for us. It's hard to do this without faith. And you've been there for everybody, and you do make yourself known. You are far stronger than any other thing in this world. Give everyone strength. Give everyone love, hope, and peace. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much, Chris, for your testimony. And we have one more day. That is tomorrow. Who's the speaker for tomorrow?
Oh, I'm here.
Yes, I'm going to share my testimony to our church members. So please come tomorrow, our church at 10:30, and we will have a great potluck tomorrow. So don't miss it. All right. Thank you so much for coming, and have a good night, and God bless you, and happy Sabbath.
There's